wasn't told who will be speaking as well as you. You're
Hi,
muted.
some
You're
of my group
muted.
members are here, but it'll just be me presenting.
Okay. So I want to welcome you. We have Victoria Vasquez from Takedown Columbus, New York City. If if you've never walked past the court on Montague and Court Street, surrounding the courthouse is Columbus Park, and there is a statue of Christopher Columbus in the park. So we're all very interested to hear what Victoria has to say. So I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you for being.
All right, thank you for making time for our group to speak tonight. So again, my name is Victoria. Can everyone see this presentation?
Yes.
I think, okay, I see some head nodding. Again, my name is Victoria, and I'm a member of a group called Takedown Columbus, New York City. We're a group of community members with backgrounds in education, social work, and mental health, who through weekly teach-ins and interactive presentations with the community work to re-educate the community and the public on the complete identities of Columbus. Before we begin the presentation today, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. So the land that I'm going to be speaking to you about today originally was the Lenape-Hoking land, the Lenape homeland. And the Lenape were the first people to live in New York and Brooklyn before it was settled by Europeans. We honor the Lenape past, present, and future. And I say this as a reminder to the continued displacement of Native peoples on this land and our ongoing commitment to dismantling the colonial legacy. So the narrative of Columbus often goes that he, in 1492, he sailed the ocean blue, that he was a lost child, a curious wanderer, taking on the noble and courageous task of discovering the New World. However, the truth is that Columbus was a capitalist through and through. He did not go into the New World with a curious lens, but with a goal to hunt and claim anything he could for material gain. For nearly a decade, Columbus lobbied European monarchies to fund his voyage to found a eastern sea route to Asia. In Portugal, England, and France, the resounding answer was all no. Experts told Columbus his calculations were wrong and the voyage would take much longer than he expected. Royal advisors in Spain raised similar concerns to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, and it turns out the naysayers were right. Columbus dramatically underestimated the Earth's circumference and the size of the oceans, but luckily for him, he ran into uncharted Americas. Between 1492 and 1504, Columbus completed 4 round-trip voyages between Spain and the New Americas. Columbus also requested he be made Great Admiral of the Ocean, appointed governor of any and all lands he discovered, and given 1/10 of all revenue from those lands. A particularly repellent aspect of the slave trade was sexual. As soon as the 1493 expedition got to the Caribbean, before it even reached Haiti, Columbus was rewarding his lieutenants with native women to rape. Quote, in a letter from Columbus to a friend in 1500, quote, 100 castellanos are as easily obtained for a woman as for a farm, and it is very general, and there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand. Columbus did not find the gold he expected, and his greed turned to selling tainos to fund his voyages. Often presented as a product of his time, his actions enraged the Spanish monarchs. The monarch's reluctance to enslave tainos intensified, and by 1499, when Queen Isabella learned of yet another arrival of slaves, she famously exclaimed, "Who is this Columbus who dares to give out my vassals as slaves?" Humanity during the time of Columbus knew that what he was doing was immoral and illegal, and further evidence is in the writings of Bartolomé de las Casas. Bartolomé de las Casas was a friar and a monk who traveled with Columbus on his voyages, and he wrote, "Columbus's men attacked the towns and spared neither the children nor the aged, nor pregnant women, nor women in childbed, not only stabbing them and dismembering them, but cutting them to pieces as if dealing with sheep in the slaughterhouse. They laid bets as to who with one stroke of the sword could split a man in two, or could cut off his head or spill out his entrails in a single stroke of the pike." For these atrocities that are well documented, and for many other things, colonists complained to the monarchy about Columbus and his mismanagement, and a royal commissioner was sent to Hispaniola in August of 1500 and brought Columbus back to Spain in chains. Although Columbus was stripped of his governorship, King Ferdinand not only granted the explorer his freedom, but subsidized a fourth voyage. Stripped of his governorship, Columbus never received his 10% of profits from indigenous slave people, gold mining, child sex slavery, or other profitable ventures in the New World. So that brings us to the statue in Columbus Park that we have today. The history of the statue is that it was carved by Emma Stebbins in the late 1860s, the sister of the then Park Board president, Henry Stebbins. It failed to make it into Central Park, and it lingered in the Central Park maintenance yard until 1934, when officials installed it in Manhattan's Chinatown, according to the Parks Department website. In 1971, following the renaming of the southern part of Cadman Plaza in honor of Columbus, the administration of Mayor John Lindsay installed the statue at its current location with support from the Italian Historical Society of America. And Columbus is often touted as a symbol of Italian-American pride and heritage. However, that is not a sentiment shared by all Italian-Americans. This photo was taken at a teach-in at Columbus Circle on Indigenous Peoples Day, and this is a sign from one of our supporters called Contro Colombo. They're a group of Italian-American New Yorkers who advocate for the dismantling of Columbus statues throughout New York City, and this is their website, and a quote from their website is that Contro Colombo believes Italian Americans must reject Christopher Columbus. To honor his legacy in both name and likeness is an affront to the dignity of all oppressed people. And besides the fact that Columbus couldn't have been Italian because Italy wasn't formed as a nation during his lifetime, that he did not discover a new nation, he never set foot in mainland USA, and he did not reveal that the earth was round. He does not represent any of the values that we usually align with Christopher Columbus. Another startling fact is that we discovered at our teach-ins, there are 4 statues around the city of Columbus, and we found that at our teach-ins there was a nearly 24/7 police attendance and surveillance guarding the statues. That sometimes 3 or more vehicles guarding a statue, and we would like to see the removal of these statues because it is not only offensive to the community of downtown Brooklyn, but is also very costly to the police department and the taxpayer. Using information on NewYorkCity.gov, we can safely assume with the base salary of a police officer, for one police officer to guard a Columbus statue is costing $14,000 to $28,000 a month per officer. In October, I was able to attend the Transportation and Public Safety Committee meeting, and we got to hear from the 84th Precinct Captain Adil Rana, and he was speaking to us about how the department was handling changes in budgets and increased demand for officers in the face of protests. And he said, when we only have limited resources, we want to make sure we concentrate those resources towards violent or felony crimes. He talked about how challenging it was to balance those resources when, quote, we have to keep extra officers, let's say, by Columbus Park and Borough Hall, because we want to make sure those facilities are safe. That eliminates those 4 or 5 officers, let's say, from patrolling Farragut or Dumbo or patrolling any other area. We can see that this is not in the best interest of public spending and is already costing our community a lot to maintain these statues. Luckily, there are plenty of other people that we can honor instead. Our most urgent goal is to have the Statue of Columbus removed from public space, but we would also like to take that opportunity to reimagine our public spaces to reflect those who have the ideals that we usually misalign with Columbus, ideals such as courage, resilience, progress, and cultural contribution. We understand that a new monument is a very intensive and costly process that must be carefully curated, and we would not want to take on that endeavor without input from our community members, the Lenape Center of New York, and other cultural and artistic groups who've been impacted most by the legacy of Columbus. And with that, what we are looking for next is a letter of introduction to the Parks Department and a letter of support from your committees to present a larger proposal to the City Council. And that is we do not have a website as fancy as Contro Columbus is, but we do have an Instagram page. And I will turn the meeting back over.
Thank you. So we'll start with some questions. I was just making a note here. Start with members of the Parks Committee and the YECA Committee. Are there any questions? Oh, and please mute yourself if you're not talking, because someone's background we're hearing. Thank you. Committee members, does anyone have a question? Oscar?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious where, if removed, the statue would be placed. I think, adding historical context around this, if it were removed, would be something that I think would be valuable.
You're muted.
Muted.
Sorry, meaning like logistically where it would be moved, or if it were to be moved to a different park. I don't know if that wouldn't.
No, I mean, just logistically, like what we do with this huge 20-foot tall statue.
It's a good question. Where do we put those? Maybe back in the maintenance yard? I don't know if it's still there. But it's a good question. We should look for that.
Any other questions from committee members?
I have a quick question.
Who is that?
This is Candace.
All right, Candace, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I saw at the end of the presentation, like you had a picture of David Dinkins, and he may be one of the people that would have a statue in place of the Columbus statue. Are there any other figures that you guys are looking at to have in place of the statue, in place of Columbus?
So that process of replacing the statue, we would want to make a bigger community question. Like, we wouldn't want it to be all up to our group who we'd want to pick. But I use David Dinkins as an example since he's recently passed. As far as living solid figures, no, we don't have anyone that we want to create a likeness of. We do definitely want to have that conversation with the Lenape Center of New York and, other descendants of African and indigenous people, who they want to symbolize, if they want it to be in the likeness of an individual or something more representative of the community.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. Have you considered placing a plaque there with a lot of information? You're talking about Columbus and outlining some of the information you provided here, and perhaps talking about the sculptress a bit. Have you thought about that?
So there was a committee board put together by the mayor, I believe 2 years ago, where they reviewed Columbus statue and other figures throughout the city to determine whether they represent hate and should be taken down. And their conclusion was that more context should be added to the Columbus statue in the form of things like plaques. And as far as I can tell, it hasn't been added. I don't think that would be in line with our group's goals. Yeah, adding more context to a monument that to a lot of people represents a lot of pain wouldn't be appropriate in our group's eyes.
So you haven't considered that?
No.
Okay. And
Ms. Vasquez, can you just say the name of the committee you just mentioned again? That arrived at that conclusion. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I got that in the notes, and I missed it.
No, it's okay. I have it on one of my sources.
That's the mayor's committee.
I'd have to find I can send it to you as a PDF, but it was put together by Bill de Blasio.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
it's online as a PDF.
At that time, that committee did not recommend that Columbus statues be taken down, right?
Or any statutes.
No, they recommended that statue. They specifically were reviewing the statue in Columbus Circle, and their recommendation for imagery like that and that specific statue was to add more context.
And you're also proposing changing the name of the park, right?
That would be, yes.
And have you considered, renaming it after Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Is that someone you would consider?
As a personal choice, I don't see that being a problem, but it wouldn't be up to me as an individual or even solely our group. That would be something we'd want to involve the community on. But we could certainly nominate her as a suggestion.
And have you considered where the funding would come for a new statue?
Not yet. Our group has had success crowdfunding. There's a lot of petitions and a lot of other groups who oppose the imagery of Columbus. So we've had success crowdfunding for our own educational endeavors, and we would hope for the financial support from other artistic and educational institutions, but we haven't found any funders for that process yet. And we know that that takes a lot of time and a lot of consideration, but we also don't want to wait till we have a solid, perfect plan to remove the Columbus statue before we have a perfectly created new statue.
So are there any, thank you for that, by the way, any, Dwight?
So Victoria, I'd like to understand better what exactly the letter of support you're asking for, given the sort of generalizations you're here. Are you suggesting that the letter of support, what exactly is it that that'll help me understand what it is we're being asked to specifically?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Trying to understand what specifically your group would be asking of the committees in terms of support. Support for what? The concept of changing, the concept of removing and replacing the statute along with renaming of the park?
Yes, that would be ideal. And also,
I want to know what you're asking for. This is my supposition. I'm trying to understand from what I'm hearing from you. So, but what exactly is it that your group would wish for us to do?
We would wish for a letter of introduction to the Parks Department, considering it's their statue. And if this were to get to a larger city council vote about the removal of the statue, if we would have your support in that vote.
Oh, but so those are two different things. In the first instance, you want to talk to the folks at the Parks Department, correct?
Yes.
And then you'll make your case to those people?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Samantha?
Hello, I have a couple of questions in light of the demands in regards to the statue. Just a little bit of context as well. The work of removing and decolonizing statues have been going on for a few years, one being Theodore Roosevelt at the Met, and also Marion Sims in Central Park. So I appreciate you guys doing the work for Christopher Columbus as well and removing that statue. But my question is, when you say, for instance, you do get the letter of support and you are moving forward to City Council, are there additional demands that you may have outside of just renaming a park? And also, what are your techniques in reaching out to community members to provide space for renaming a park? Are you guys also looking at budgetary things? Because you mentioned $13,000 to $20,000 for NYPD. Are you also looking at goals for reallocating funds for the removal? I'm just trying to get a better context of what is the end goal, or are you going to continue a new movement for some other statues?
So our end goal would be eventually all of the statues in New York City. So we're not looking at reallocating funds that the police department are spending at this time. And theoretically, if we remove the statues, then that funding wouldn't have to be spent guarding a statue. It could be better spent fighting crime. So that would be our only goal, is first primary goal, removing the statue. That is our goal. And then initiating a process to rename the park and have a new statue put up. Our main way of getting the community engaged right now is through a lot of social media, through our coalition building. So we put out, advertisements for when we're having a teach-in and ways that people can invite other people, and if they can't attend, how they can see it online. And that's how we do most of our our coalition building is through social media.
So
Did that get all of your questions?
Is your committee just geared to the Columbus statue here in Columbus Park? Is there no other agenda, no other statutes anywhere in the city that you're concerned about? Or
there are 4 other statues in New York, and we would eventually like to have those taken down as well.
I'm sorry, what other statues?
There's a statue in every borough except Staten Island. There's a large bust in the Bronx, and then there are 4 other Columbus statues, which we would.
You're saying there are 4 statues of Columbus that you would like to see removed, and that's the only goal of your committee?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Suzanne, did you have a question? You're muted, Suzanne.
Barbara?
Hi. My question was just around Victoria, the committee and how it was formed. And also if you can give any more info on the committee, the mayor's committee, and sort of how that was initiated, and if there was any consideration to having the other Columbus statues in consideration with that discussion. If you know that.
So that's okay. Oh, were you asking about how our Takedown Columbus was formed, or how the mayor's commission was formed?
First how Takedown Columbus was formed, sort of what's the background, and if you could just talk about the membership and the number of people you have actively working with you, just to give us some color on the support. And then my second question was about the committee, the mayor's task force, or whatever we might call it, just sort of where that came from, and if there was or wasn't, to your knowledge, a reason why Columbus Park and our borough wasn't included in that discussion.
So our Takedown Columbus was started by a teacher named Axel, who put out a call to on his social media page asking if anyone would be interested in doing a teach-in at a Columbus statue. And we all got together on Zoom, and we came up with a curriculum, and we had posters made, and we had a really great turnout for our first, I think for our first one, we had like 40 people show up, and it was at the Columbus statue in downtown Brooklyn in front of the Supreme Court building. And then from there, we did a little tour around the city. We did one in front of the Brooklyn Library, one in the front of the statue in the Bronx, and you know, we had a lot of really great public turnout. The mayor's commission for the review of symbols of hate, which is the language that is used in the report, was that it was, I believe, right after the killings in Charlottesville over a white supremacist monument that sparked protests and counter-protests, and a young woman died. So there was a lot of push in New York City at that time to review our own symbolism and images. I believe only a handful of images were picked just because there would probably be hundreds of monuments on that list. And so a committee was formed, and they would have open discussions with the community, and then it was a review board of different professionals who would come up with a recommendation for the mayor. And some images were removed. I believe a statue of a gynecologist who experimented on enslaved African-American women was removed. But the Columbus statue and Columbus Circle, their suggestion was that it remain, but with more context. That report is available online as a PDF. I'm sorry, I don't have it now. So this Columbus statue that we're specifically talking about in downtown Brooklyn was not in that report, just the one in Columbus Circle. And I'm sorry, was there another question after that one? Okay, but this specific statue does have, you know, going back at least 5 years, you know, 4 or 5 petitions on this one alone to have it taken down. So this is, you know, Columbus as a controversial image is, you know, a very long history of it in the city.
So I just wanted to follow up on Suzanne's question, and then we'll go to Betty. She had asked you how many people are in the group at the moment. I was wondering if you could respond to that.
We have about 10 group members.
Thank you. Betty?
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Ms. Vasquez for a thorough presentation and the time and energy, especially in involving young people in this issue. I'm wondering if through your group there's been specific outreach to the Italian American community, because amongst many people in that community, the symbol of ethnic and pride in being Italian American, which, as you've noted and the history notes, might not be entirely correct, but it does symbolize a pride. And many groups have their own people that they revere or days that they celebrate in terms of their own community. So what has been your dialogue, if any, with the Italian American community?
We haven't targeted the Italian American community for outreach. It's not our objective to convince them or, woo them to our teach-ins. Our teach-ins are open to the public, and we encourage anyone and everyone to come. Our engagement with Contro Colombo, the Italian American group, has been very pleasant, but we have not gone out to petition the Italian American community.
Thank you.
Andrew, did you have a question?
Barbara, could you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to, voice the same idea that Betty Fibush voiced, because I think it's a necessary part of the discussion. Just because a group of us met here at this meeting is not sufficient for me to say I am all for taking down the statue. I really would welcome a little more academic discussion on this whole subject. What you presented, I find extremely informative. I will do my own research further on this. I really appreciate for you bringing this out to at least my attention. But I think as long as I'm one of the people that also find it, interesting to hear more, I think a very broad community has to take part in this discussion. This cannot be just, we got together after a year in a group meeting of 15 or 20 people in a room, and this is our proposal, take down the statue. I think this needs a lot of serious discussion, whether that statue deserves to stand there or not, but it's been there since, I guess, what, the 30s? We're talking about over 50 years.
I think the 70s.
70.
1934.
34. It's a serious part of our life. And yes, although it maybe should be considered for taking down, but I think the discussion has to be a little bit more broader in order to fully, completely get to the bottom of this. I can't say that the reason I'm saying this is because I disagree with what you're saying. I don't. I am, absolutely shocked that, of the things I've learned from you. I will absolutely do my own diligence to study more. And not just regards to that, I wanted to study him more. But, it's not only the Italians that might be offended. It might be also the Spanish people of Spain that might find this objectionable. And I don't think we need to create a, just willy-nilly a discussion that we might regret in the future. Yes, the discussion of where the statue would go, it's not for us to decide. I think if it's a Parks Department issue, or they'll find a place where to hide it. For I think 50 years or 60 years, they hid 4 eagles from us somewhere in some location until it was time to celebrate 14th Park, and they brought one of the eagles back. The other 3 are still hidden somewhere in Parks Department's warehouses somewhere. So, that shouldn't be a discussion of where we're going to put the park, what it's going to cost, who's going to put up the money. I think the final discussion about the money, who we replace it with, that comes next. The first, I think, is a very serious discussion in the community, in Brooklyn, among people that, yes, we would like to quietly decommission this statue. It's not the first time. There have been other statues in various other parks that are standing there, and nobody even knows why they're standing there. I mean, we walk through other parks and you could ask yourself, why is this here? And nobody knows. So I just, that's enough for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from YECA have a question? Suzanne? Suzanne, you're muted.
So I agree with almost everything that Andrew said. I'm just wondering if we want to be on board with requesting an exploration into the statue. I don't think any of us is prepared to say it shouldn't, be there, but should there be a similar exploration that took place several years ago for the Columbus Circle that should take place for this statue where the different groups are consulted? I'm not completely clear on sort of whose domain the statue is. Is it the Parks Department's domain? Is that how it works? That if the statue's in their park, it's their domain. But do we want to request that that they host an exploration into this?
Ms. Quint, that's correct. It is ultimately a Parks Department decision. Mr. Paris did share that the Parks Department was invited to attend or to send a representative on 3 occasions. They declined to attend, although I believe Ms. Andrea Keys is on the call if she'd like to speak up.
I am on the phone right now, and as I mentioned earlier, I am taking all the notes for Commissioner Marr in the morning, and I guess he'll contact Mr. Paris or Ms. Church and about his decision or the Commissioner's decision.
Are there any questions from community board members?
Barbara, just one other thing is that
yes, Andrew. Yeah.
I just really would like to get a little bit more of a clarification because I don't think that we, maybe this particular half a year or whatever, there were officers in and around that area. But in other times, I have not seen 3 or 4 officers sitting there guarding the statue. I mean, and this is, I've been getting out of that subway stop many times and walking over through Columbus Park, over to the bus stations where the B38 is, and B54 as well across J Street. So I've never run across any 3 or 4 officers sitting in the park in the evening, protecting that. I would have welcomed they be there because sometimes late at night I would have felt a little bit uncomfortable, but I have never seen even a patrol car or 3 or 4 officers sitting there. So I really would love to quiz the powers that be at the precinct to tell us exactly what they're doing as far as the police officers in the park or in that general area, to get a definition of what exactly those officers or whatever officers are there, so we don't confuse the numbers. Because I don't think it's going to be the removal or the desire to remove the station should not be about that there's 3 or 4 officers just sitting and guarding that when that is not a factual presentation. Not that this committee.
Ms. Zoller-Gringer, your volume is quite low, but I could address Mr. Lastrowetsky's question if you'd like.
All right, I'm sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I believe the local precinct was invited for this evening. I do not believe someone is here from the precinct. All right, Dwight, do you have a quick question? And then I want to give Juliet an opportunity.
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to sort of comment on what Andrew had said, is that certainly when I passed by the statute today, 4-ish, there were 2 officers in there there. Now, whether they were specifically there for the statute, which does have a little chain link around the fence itself, but there were 2 officers there when I passed by today.
All right. I can volunteer that I did ask an officer in the park not too long ago if he was there to guard the statute, and his response was basically, what statute? I know other people have had other responses, but that was basically the response I received. All right. So thank you for the questions. I'm going to turn it over now to Juliet. You had a question? Or your hand was raised?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that Ms. Vasquez did come over to our committee meeting and discuss the police presence at the statues. And we referred her over to your collective meetings, where I think this discussion has been really thorough and appropriate. I just wanted to add that, from a personal perspective, our committee, I can't represent the whole committee because we didn't vote on it, but I would say that from a social justice perspective, I would support what Ms. Quint had suggested, which would be the exploration and the further discussion of the possibility of removing the statue. I do think, like Mr. Lastowecki and Ms. Flybush had suggested, more outreach to particular communities, especially the Italian American community, and more public engagement is probably the best idea, because this is a much larger issue. As a student of anthropology myself, personally, I read Columbus's journal, and the journal is really explicit on how, in the first few pages of his experience of coming to the New World, where he approaches the Native American culture as the sort of the noble savage that people have sometimes referred to them as, and then later on completely dehumanizes them in order to exploit them, as Ms. Vasquez has depicted in her presentation today. And it's something that is the truth that I think more people really need to know about. I find it surprising that some people don't already know about that. But the discussion, I think, will enlighten more people. So that would be something that I support. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other community board members who want to ask a question at this point? And I don't know that I see everyone, but I don't.
Hi,
Nick, did you want to ask a question? Sure.
Yeah, just real quick. Ms. Vasquez, just curious where the information came about the police and the, the costs and them guarding it, just where you were able to hear that from.
So the number of police guarding a statue was our own observation, and that was me speaking cumulatively about all of the statues we attended. So maybe the one in front of the Supreme Court building does only just have one patrol car, but we've been to other statues that have had 3+ patrol cars. Maybe part of that was that they were, put on by our appearance at the statue. So the number of cars is based on our own observation. We have plenty of pictures of our teach-ins with police cars in the background. And the calculations of how much it cost per month was just simple math using the police salary that was on the New York City .gov website.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And I guess just personal comment, I just personally support this. I don't think that, I think statues are a representation of our values. And it's quite clear, if we know the real history here, which is real, this is not a value of probably anybody here. So I do not support further exploration if that means we have to convince people to remove statues that represent oppression. I'm not interested in that personally.
This is Dorothea. I'd like to say something to Ms. Vasquez. I understand that she said she observed police cars, but did that necessarily mean that they were guarding the statue, or did it just mean that they were in the statue, or that's where they parked their cars? How do we know that this is exactly what their job was, protecting this statue? That's what I would like to know.
I guess we would have to definitely ask them ourselves, but from the proximity of their car being a few feet from the statue and how they interacted with our group as we were performing a teach-in at the statue, it appeared to us that they were there to get between us and the statue. And based on the, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but certainly if we watch the video from the community board meeting, the public transportation one, Captain Adil Rana does state that he does have to lose 4 or 5 officers from doing other police work in order to go to, Columbus Park or the Barclays.
I don't know. I guess I would just want to know that that is exactly what they were doing and not the fact that they were there. Maybe they stopped people from interacting because they were just there and they didn't want any problems, because we know that certain statues, certain things do cause people to get a little upset and they start to interact in a way they shouldn't. But I'm just saying, just listening to you, I'm not disagreeing with whatever else was said. I missed a lot of the meeting, but I know the history of Christopher Columbus. But just to hear you say that you saw cars parked there, I don't find that a convincing enough reason without us having some type of proof. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meredith?
Can you hear me? I'm unmuted, right? I want to echo what Mr. Ferreira said, and thank you for his comments. I agree, but I'm also not particularly interested in further exploration. And to quote Nick, if this requires us sort of convincing people that we have to remove symbols of oppression, that's not something I think is necessary. And I think, I also wonder if we can put aside the conversation about what it costs for police to guard the statue, because I think that's not even germane to this conversation. I don't think we're here to make a decision based on whether we're utilizing a public resource efficiently or not, because we could have a million meetings about how we spend all kinds of dollars, and we do that. We have conversations about that, but that's not really what this is about. So it doesn't seem like we have to continue to belabor that point, and whether TDNYC has accurate numbers or not. I mean, to me personally, it's not important if there are $0 spent guarding the statues. That's not really why I feel like we're here to have the discussion. Thank you, chairs.
I think maybe
again, my understanding from what I read is that is one of the reasons, not maybe the main reason, but one of the reasons that this was brought to our, for us to make a decision, not only about what was going on with Christopher Columbus and the atrocities, but also because of the dollars that were wasted because of police guarding the statues. So whereas I hear you say it's maybe not germane to the conversation, it is part of what was presented. So I'm not saying that's what you have to make a decision on, but I don't think we should just toss it aside, because that is part of what was brought up. It was the cost and the atrocities. It was a little bit of everything. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to clarify what I heard, was that before an action was taken, you really should hear from all the parties. I mean, there may be things that we, were presented with one set of information, and there may be more information out there that we should consider and give people an opportunity to express, reaching out to different groups in the neighborhood, rather than just listening to one group representing 10 people with one side of the presentation, whether or not it's the only one or not. We should have other people have the opportunity to weigh in as well. And anyway, is there anyone now who's not a community board member but is attending the meeting and would like to ask a question? We'll open the floor.
Chair Zoller-Gringer, I've been keeping a running list. The first person that requested is Lisa. No problem. The first person that requested is Lisa Ackerman. Just a reminder that everyone is welcome and encouraged to speak. Just message me in the chat or raise your hand electronically. You do have 2 minutes and we are being recorded. So Lisa Ackerman, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. I am completely in agreement that public monuments need to represent public sentiment, and public sentiment can change over time. And I think whether monuments stay or go, it does have to be a larger community discussion. And I am not going to argue that Columbus was a nice person or didn't do all the things that have been discussed. I think the one thing that should be remembered if a statue does come down is how do we record some pieces of history that might be important to understand. And the mania for Columbus came out of the post-Civil War desire to sort of create healing bombs for the country. And rightly or wrongly, they went back to the colonial era, and in the case of Columbus, went back even farther. So this mania for Columbus really was all about post-Civil War, late 19th century America, and trying to create universal themes. And the ramp up to the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyages is kind of what fueled all of this. And Italians walked into this. They did not pick Columbus as their symbol. Literally, in the most simplified way, the mass immigration of Italians to this country happened in that moment. They were horribly persecuted, as all immigrant groups have been over time. And so they really looked around and it was like, well, they like Columbus. He's Italian. We're Italian. Let's hitch our wagon there. So, I mean, I think that, you know, whatever decisions are made, there are pieces of history that we still want to figure out how to memorialize. And that's not glorifying Columbus, but it's looking at historical moments. And Italian Americans are still 10% of the greater New York metro area population. So in some way, you still want to understand how to represent that piece of it, even if not all Italians take Columbus as their symbol. It still was a moment in time that we don't necessarily want to forget. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Next on the list is Malcolm Hill, but I believe he may have left the meeting. His hand went up very early. Malcolm Hill, are you still with us? Okay, we'll come back to you. How about Margot Finkel?
Hi. I first just want to say I think that this idea about opening things up for more exploration and to hear from Italian Americans is guided. I think that this meeting right now is a public meeting where Italian Americans can show up and talk about the importance of that statue to them if they want. If they're not here and the rest of us are in agreement that that statue is disgraceful, I think we can go with that. This was a public meeting. I'm not involved with the community board, but I found out about it. I think that, you know, we're hearing from people on this meeting that they didn't know about the atrocities that Columbus committed. And part of the reason for that is because he's been normalized as a hero because of statues, you know, like the one in a few blocks from where I live, the statue that we're talking about. I think that it's a problem. We're all disgusted thinking about the, you know, not just oppression that Columbus committed, but the genocide that he enacted. I didn't know that that statue was there. I live just a couple blocks away, and now I do know what it is, and I'm disgusted. I think it should come down, and I think that the comment from Melissa Litwin in the chat is really sort of all we need. I mean, I'm not an Indigenous person, and I'm still upset when I see that statue, and just to know that we have community members who see that statue as a symbol of their oppression and have to walk by it is unacceptable. We can make a plaque about the history of the statue. We can put it in a museum. There are lots of ways to preserve history without having a symbol of genocide, you know, that people have to see as part of their commute every morning, genocide against their community, their family. So thanks so much. I hope we can support this initiative with a letter.
Thank you, Margot. And attendance is involvement, so you're involved now. The next person on the list is Ryan Dubois. Is he still with us, Ryan?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I had put some comments in the chat box just because I wasn't sure how quickly I would have the opportunity to speak, so I'm glad I am able to speak now. So I'll just reiterate what I said in the chat. Basically, I want to second many of the sentiments that have been expressed here. I think, we're in a moment of national truth and reconciliation, and questioning Columbus, the narrative and symbolism of Columbus is a really, really necessary and important part of that process. Myself speaking as an Italian American, I do not feel that Columbus accurately represents Italian heritage or the immigrant experience of Italians in New York. And it's unquestionable that, it's historical record that he was the pioneer of a hemispheric wide genocide. And so I think, the presence of his statue, it is unfortunate, it is disgraceful. And so I just wanted to express my personal sentiment that I do support it coming down. I support all Columbus statues coming down. I support Columbus Day becoming Indigenous Peoples Day. And I want to thank everyone who has expressed similar sentiments tonight. Thank you.
Okay, next is Melissa Litwin. I just wanted to pause. I believe board member Samantha Johnson had her hand up. Did you want to say something?
I will just make it short, and I agree with most of the sentiments of my board members in regards to not wanting to go to more detail about information. There's Google, we can find that out. We've been talking about Columbus for many years now and having a debate. And as I mentioned in my earlier comments, there have been multiple statues that have been removed. And the statue that was in Central Park for the individual who's supposed to be the founder for gynecology for the mutilation of Black and brown women has been removed. And it took 8 years, unfortunately, but it got done. So I think that historically we are reviewing statues for pride instances and not necessarily for the actual advocacy for Black and brown people. So I would love to support this letter just to get it moving, and that the conversation can be started to be more intentional about how we're representing Black and brown people and Indigenous folk in our land. So I just want to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Duffy from the board would also like to make a comment.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to weigh in myself and share that I feel the same way as Sam and other members around this. I looked it up, and the journals of Christopher Columbus, where a lot of this information about his own perpetrated genocide it was first translated into English in 1827. So we've had plenty of time to digest and thoroughly understand the extent of the damage that he did to the people that were living here prior to the arrival of Europeans. And I know I have a very strong feeling that in 10 years, all Columbus statues will be gone, just the way that things are developing in our country. And so our question now is, what role do we want to play in that history when people are looking back 10 years? 10 years from now, when they're looking back, we have an opportunity to play a role in this and to be part of the education. And I support any way we can support this movement and this effort. I would advocate for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Duffy. Okay, back to public commentary. We have Melissa Litwin. Is Melissa still with us? Oh, Ms. Litwin, it looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you, so you might need to try to call in. We'll circle back to you. Next up is Brian Lang.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just to introduce myself. I'm a resident, public member, CUNY student. I just want to thank Ms. Velasquez for thank you for her time and for educating us. Of course, this is very, very important. Educating others. I also really appreciate the tenacity of your mission. Sitting here and answering all of our questions. And most of all, I really appreciate your land acknowledgement. I think that's something that's much too rare. I think that's something that everybody in our community and our government should really be acknowledging, that we all live and love and enjoy stolen land. So that's something that I think we all really need to recognize. And I have a question. I don't know if that's okay to ask a question, but basically I just want to know, do you know of any contact that the mayor or any city agencies have with Lenape leadership? Is there any sort of communication, or is there a lack thereof?
I have no idea if the mayor's talking to the Lenape Center or any indigenous groups in New York.
Okay, so it seems so.
Sorry,
probably
I would say, I hope there is. I hope there is,
Yeah.
and I just don't know, but I wouldn't know.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Carly Schleider. I hope I'm saying your name right, Carly. Is Carly? Okay, we'll come back to you. Is George?
Yeah, no, I just typed my comments into the chat box and pretty much what I think. Nothing else to add. Thank you.
You're welcome to speak that aloud if you'd like it on the recording. Otherwise, no.
Okay. I just wrote that I wanted to echo comments about not wanting to open up this further exploration into the context of Christopher Columbus, especially in relationship to how we could possibly put that in connection with the statue as it stands now, and that the statue to me just represent genocide and as such has no place in the city. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. Is George Scott still on the call?
Yes, can
Scott?
everybody hear me?
Okay, yes.
How you doing? So first, I just want to thank Victoria for a tremendous presentation. I've been to teas and they're awesome. I want to thank everybody for giving us the time and the floor to actually speak about this. Is super important. I am Native American and Black on my father's side. I am Latino on my mother's side. I am a Brooklynite who has to do jury duty at that courthouse. And I know the courthouse and the park are separate. I understand that. But I have to go and serve justice in a building that right in front of it has a criminal, a historically awful criminal. It is triggering every time I walk by it. Now, I understand that we may want to conversate with the Italian American community, and that's fine, but are we also going to have a conversation with the Lenape community, with the other tribes from New York, like my tribe, with black and brown folks who view that man in the same light as Hitler? That's not an exaggeration. So I hear that we want to have further discussion. I don't think that discussion is warranted. The history textbooks speak for itself. But if we're going to have that conversation, my question now becomes, is that going to be inclusive of all the parties involved, or are we just worried about upsetting potentially Spaniard Americans or Italian Americans? Because there's a lot of other people who are super upset with Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Next is Daniel Raymond.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Dan Raymond. I actually work for the fire department as a fire inspector. I'm here speaking in a personal capacity, but I just want to kind of like let you guys know that the narrative of who, the type of people who are opposed to Columbus is not what it seems in reality. So I just want to say a few words. I'll try to keep it under 2 minutes, but my family's been here in New York City for 120 years. My grandmother's side of the family is the Chiarelli family from a place called Castrofilippo in Sicily. Not to exclude Northerners, but a vast majority of Italian New Yorkers are from Sicily or Southern Italy. When we came here, we had nothing, and my great-grandfather made a living as a street vendor. My grandfather was a construction worker. My grandma worked as a union job in an office. My father was a New York City firefighter, and my mother cut hair and still does. Overwhelmingly, our history here in New York is a history of working people. In 2020, knowing what we know about Columbus, who was supposedly from what is now known as Northern Italy, sailed under the Spanish crown and committed all these atrocities against the indigenous population when he arrived, how is it that we can tie our legacy, history, or anything about our existence to him? One day I was told that Columbus was the representative of my people. He was chosen as an Italian-American symbol, but he essentially represents nothing about our collective experience as human beings working for a living in New York City for the last 100 years. I would welcome the statues being taken down, and contrary to how we're represented in the press, hundreds of thousands of other Italian New Yorkers of all generations agree. A majority of my family agrees, and we're not unique. We're being falsely represented. Just take it down. Doesn't matter what we do with it, who we replace it with, or the minute details of, we don't want a plaque. The details don't matter. We want it down. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Next is Malcolm Hill. No, I don't think we've got him. Emily Engelhart.
Hi, is my sound working?
Yes.
Okay, hi. My name's Emily Engelhart. I live in Park Slope. I've also done jury duty in that court and whizzed right by that statue without looking at it like every other statue, right? But that's my privilege to not have to look around and wonder if I'm being subjugated right there on top of me. Man, I was getting really steamed up at the beginning of this meeting with the really minute questions I was hearing. I mean, okay, somebody mentioned that they wanted to know more intellectual reasons to take the statue down, which is just like weird, because I don't think anyone has ever made and put up a statue for intellectual reasons. I think they do it purely emotionally. This man discovered America, quote unquote, for anyone who can't see me. So he gets many, many huge statues of his face and body. For some reason, that's not intellectual, that is an emotional thing. So I think it makes perfect sense to take it down for just as emotional of a reason, which is the rape, terror, plundering, obliteration of a whole group of people who rightly own this land over us. Geez, I think I just got really steamed up and ahead of myself. I had so many other things I wanted to say, but then I started listening to some people. Yeah, I don't think it needs to go into a museum afterwards. I think take it down. I don't think we need to store it. I think we can destroy it. I don't think here's the other thing, putting up a plaque to explain the historical context of this statue. Okay, so what's the plaque gonna say? I murdered, I raped children. I tried to get rid of a whole land of people so that I can own land that wasn't mine. And here's what I look like. Like, I don't understand how that helps anybody. You can read that, like someone else mentioned, anywhere on the internet, the actual truth. Just take the statue down. It doesn't need an explanation. No more exploration on this topic. Please just agree to write a letter for this amazing woman who has put all this information together for us, I think a little unnecessarily, because so many of these things are obvious truths. So that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Engelhart. Okay, last call for, we're gonna try Malcolm Hill again, and then Melissa Litwin, and then I see Nick Ferreira. Melissa Litwin, are you still here? Okay, we'll come. I think we might have lost those two. Mr. Ferreira.
Yeah, I just last comment I wanted to say, I think if if we're interested in a conversation, I think nothing will start a conversation quicker than the removal of the statue. So I think that would be the great conversation.
Okay, I see two more hands. Thank you, Mr. Ferreira. I'm sorry I missed you the first time. Kanisha Trainham Cooper.
Hi, yes, my name is Kanisha Trainham Cooper. Thank you for this amazing, informative discussion. I'm actually the Mayor's Action Plan Engagement Coordinator over in Ingersoll Nitro Development. So this is my first time coming here, but I wanted to I've heard a lot of information, and I've also I resonate with a lot of people who are on this call. I understand where a lot of people, including, by the way, would like this to be taken down. But is there anything that we can do to prevent it from happening again, from going up again, or anything else that can prevent either statues or any type of resemblance to go up anywhere? Is that possible?
I think that's like a large. Am I unmuted? It's like a larger, maybe theoretical question about the community conscious. I mean, we're a group of educators. We don't go around trying to tie ropes to the statues. We think it is important that before we ask people to do something, say no why. So as far as taking the statue down, I don't think we need, I don't think we need to engage the public since it's already been engaged so many more times in a debate when they don't even have the information first. So I would love to see the statue taken down, and not quietly. There should be an announcement about it. People should know why, and they should know what the new image is going to represent and why we're taking it down. We can do both at the same time. We can educate people and not have to wait to take the statue down to do it. The taking of the statue down can be part of the re-education. But I think, changing the narrative is what our real goal is. It's deeper, obviously, than the marble. So I think changing the narrative, talking about these things openly is really what's going to change it in the long run. Oh, you're muted, Taya.
I think you're muted.
Do you think
you beat me to it? It was Mr. Luckett.
Thank
do
you.
you think we're? Oh.
Yeah, sorry. I was hoping just to wrap up, and actually, I was going to motion to move to a vote on this. But,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I just want to echo what a lot of people have already said. I don't want to really beat a dead horse on this, but I think from my standpoint, how I look at this is that CV2 is a public body and is a body that represents the community in the same way that a statue on public land it implies support and implies whether or not there's public dollars going to it. It implies an unequivocal support of whoever the statue is of. So yes, I agree. I don't think we should let this issue get mired in the bureaucracy of public polling. I think we have the real opportunity to act on this. And I think, whether or not what happens to the statue is a whole nother question, but I think it standing on public ground is, yes, a support, and it indicates, I think inaction on the part of this board would indicate support as well. So with that, I'll motion to vote on the issue of, was it writing we can get the exact wording, but write a letter of support to the Department of Parks and Recreation.
All right, well, is that, so your motion is that we write a letter to the Department of Parks in support of taking down the statue?
Yes, sorry, I have two motions. One is a letter of support to yes, the introduction to the Department of Parks and Recreation, as well as a letter of support for the City Council.
I don't know that we can introduce, Taya, maybe you know more than I don't think we can introduce this group to the Parks Department. I don't think that's our role. I think they can reach out to the Parks Department directly, as anybody could. But if your motion is, as I hear it, is to write a letter to the Parks Department in support of removing the statue. Is that what your motion is?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Who said that?
Was that Sam?
Yep.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay. All right, now, Taya, how are we going to, are we just raising our hands? Or how are we going to do this?
In this case, a roll call would probably be helpful. Meredith, I'd be happy to do that if you like.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be, I don't need to note, would you like me to note a roll call in the minutes or just the total?
Just the totals as we would for a land use.
Okay.
No, that's the land. Oh, okay. You're just having the overall vote. You're not putting people's names down.
That's right.
The question is, okay.
But it's just
you're
because
calling the name to make it easier.
But I can't see everyone. I've been
Right.
trying to figure out how to see more people, but I can only see like 4 or 5 people across the bottom, so I won't be able to count if people raise.
Wow.
No problem. I gotcha. Barbara Zoller-Gringer, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Andrew Lestovecki, how do you vote?
Andrew, you have to mute.
Abstain.
Ms. Harrison, how do you vote?
I support the letter.
Carolyn Hubbard, Common Honorary, how do you vote?
I support the letter also.
Leonard Levinton, I believe.
I abstain.
Jennifer Melby, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain.
Suzanne Quint,
I support the letter.
Dwight Smith. Oh, you're muted, Mr. Smith.
You're muted, Dwight.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. No. I support the letter.
Chair Feibush, how do you vote?
Sorry, I didn't hear Mr. Smith.
With reservations, actually.
Dwight Smith is a yes with reservations. Chair Feibush, how do you vote?
I support the letter.
Ms. Dorothea Thompson Manning, Vice Chair, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Ms. Phillips Almeida, Ms. Secretary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Alec Duffy,
I vote yes.
Mr. Nicholas Ferreira, there he
Yes.
is. Ms. Sam Johnson,
Favor.
Mr. Luckett,
I vote yes.
there he is. Ms. Santia Palacia,
I vote yes.
and Mr. Eric Spruill, who I believe was joining us by phone. Mr. Spruill on the line. Okay, so that would be 5 abstain, 1 absent. 11 yes and 0 no. So it does pass.
That's what I got as well, 1105.
Thank you, everyone, for being so involved.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez, for the presentation. We appreciate you.
Point of order, may I speak? I just had a question because I think the second part of the request was to something regarding the city council. Is that been folded into this? First request, or have we? I'm just checking on the status of that second part.
I think the letter of support is good, and that if we make it to the city council, we could revisit it.
Got it. Thank you.
Taya, do you know offhand, is this then going to the board for a vote, the full board? Betty, you're on mute.
That's what happens. I don't normally talk so much on meetings. Yes, that's correct. And the next general board meeting is this Wednesday. So if you're interested in this topic, that would be the next one to follow this Wednesday.
Thank you. All right. Thank you again, Victoria, for being here and presenting. We're moving on now to the business of the different committees. I feel like I've talked enough here. I don't really have a chairperson's report for this evening. I'll go to the approval of our minutes. Everybody received some edits to the minutes today, and since nobody commented on them, I'm going to assume that the edits are accepted. So can I get a consensus to approve our minutes from the November meeting? Okay. All right, looks good. Andrew, you're supposed to ask or report if there is any other parks business. You're listed on the agenda here about any other parks and recreation business. You're muted now.
No, I have nothing to report or ask.
Okay, so Betty, I'm going to turn this over to you now.
Thank you.
Finally.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Okay, so our first item of business is the approval of the minutes in October of this year. As you know, we didn't meet in November, so we're up to approving October. The minutes were sent. Is there any discussion, objection, edit? Hearing none, can we say the minutes were approved by consensus? Yeah, okay. I see a few thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, and then we have the chair's report. So very briefly, I've been talking on and off about the District 15 PAR, which is a participatory action research project that they have engaged in to look at zoning for the elementary schools in what they call sub-district 3C, which involves 2 of the schools in our area. And they reported out to the District 15 community November 17th. I will send a link to the office, and maybe Taya can send the copy of the transcript. It was a long meeting. It was over an hour, so I just want to summarize it very briefly, but people can listen to it. It's actually quite informative. Initially, we thought the discussion and consideration would be, do we have like an open zone so that children who would be applying for kindergarten could go to any school in that area? Or would they change the addresses? So if you live in this street, this house, you're zoned for a specific school. So that was the basic issue. And like anything else, the more people discuss and explore, they're not looking at it. They're no longer looking at it that way. They're really talking about how do we make our schools inclusive for all children? How do we move resources, pedagogy, curriculum, and school practices toward inclusiveness and anti-racism? So they're looking at it kind of in a broader way than where do you live and where should you go? So as this issue unfolds now, those recommendations are going to the DOE Office of Zoning, and they will, I think, come up with a proposal and a timeline. The goal initially was that by the time the children start applying for kindergarten for next September, that there would be a notion, are they applying based on the address or are they applying to any of the schools in the area? So before I give my District 13 report, are there any very brief questions? Did I make any sense? It's kind of hard to explain. Are there any questions here? Alec, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, I realized I was unmuted because earlier I just wanted to tell Taya that she's screen sharing right now. Just in case she pops over to Facebook, that we're all looking at her screen, Taya.
Facebook doesn't exist, Mr. Duffy. Yes, this was intentional.
Oh, okay, sorry. My apologies.
Okay, so I think what Taya is doing is helping me give my chair report in saying that, yes, for the next meeting, Superintendent Samuels from District 13 has agreed to attend, so we can think about what questions do we want to ask about what is the current state of District 13 and their process in looking at resource equity, desegregation, and integration. So in terms of that, and I'll ask Taya to send out the invitation. I'll send it to you, Taya. December 15th at 7 o'clock. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who you know, many people have read her work about, she's a award-winning journalist from the Times, and she talks a lot about segregation in the schools. She's a parent in District 13, and she's going to be the guest presenter. I've heard her speak, and she's quite brilliant as well as you know, being very a good speaker. So they're going to be talking about resource equity, because it isn't just, as I've said, it isn't just about sorting children and where do the children go to different schools based on where you live or based on other factors, but really, what does it mean to have a thriving school community where all children are learning and so on. Okay, so that's for December 15th. Okay, so that is, are there any questions about that? Okay, so that's my chair's report to bring you up to date on District 13 and District 15 and how they're going about the complicated question of desegregation in the schools. Dorothea, do you want to ask people if there's any other business for our committee?
Well, I can do that. I'm not sure. Is there anything else anyone else would like to discuss or have any other ideas for future meetings? Hearing none, I guess the answer is no.
Thank you. Okay, so the next session, the next section of this meeting is called Community Forum, in which we can hear from people in the community who have questions, I guess, or comments for either of the two committees that are meeting jointly tonight. So you can raise your
Chair Fibush, the only hand I see up is owner, and I forget who owner is.
Carolyn.
Oh, Carolyn, yes.
Carolyn, okay. Is there a question or a comment?
I'm not sure. Carolyn, you're currently muted. Did you have a question or a comment? I don't know if she can hear us. Okay, maybe that was an error. No other hands.
No other hands. Okay, so thank you everyone for spending the time with us tonight on WebEx. Meredith, can you offer a motion? The young person in Alex Green. Hello, young person Duffy. Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn at 7:35.
I'll second. Have a good holidays. It'll be a very different holiday this year as we're apart but together in spirit, and wish everyone be safe and healthy. And yeah, so this is our December meeting of the two committees. So be well. Good night.
Be well, everybody.
So long. Have a nice holiday.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for everything.
Happy